Someone sent me this video, so I'm going to take it point by point. I'm not going to tag them in it, I'm going to send it to them afterward. He starts off with the question, I don't understand how people can think that if you're saved by water baptism that it's not a good work, it's not a work salvation. And I can go into great detail understanding what I consider a work salvation to be and different types of works and all that. But just for the sake of time and simplicity, baptism is something someone does to you. In the Greek language, it is a passive action. You need to go and be baptized. You don't need to go and baptize someone else. You need to go and be baptized. One thing I've never understood is if we understand we're talking about water baptism here, how does baptism save us after someone is already saved? Sometimes people will say it's a different baptism, but in 1 Peter 3:21, a lot of times a lot of times people emphasize the parentheses. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the appeal or answer of a good conscience towards God. If you ignore the parentheses, it says baptism saves us by the resurrection of Christ. So the argument here centers on what's said in the parentheses. Baptism is not a removal of the filth of the flesh. Now, does that mean that baptism is not an action that removes the filth of the flesh, that it is an answer of a good conscience towards God? The meaning would be similar to John 6:27. Do not labor for the food which perishes. The understanding being not only this, but to labor for the food which goes into everlasting life, which is the same way I understand 1 Corinthians chapter 1, which he does talk about. I wasn't sent only to baptize, but to preach the gospel. The gospel is more important than baptism. Spiritual food's more important than food that you need every day. The appeal of a good conscience towards God is emphasized more than just the washing in water that removes filth from the flesh. To make the argument that 2 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 1, that filth there means sin, therefore this passage is speaking about filth and it tells you baptism does not remove sin, cannot be defended. All you're doing is you're taking two different words from two different passages in two different contexts and trying to make them mean the same thing. I also want to point out that there are two different Greek words under consideration.